Does the surge of populism threaten the very fabric of our democracies? The question might sound alarming, but it's one we must ask as we witness the global rise of populism in recent years. Populism, by its very nature, is a political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel disregarded by established elite groups. It's characterized by charismatic leaders, emotional appeals, and often an us versus them mentality. On the surface, it appears to be a democratic phenomenon. After all, isn't democracy about the voice of the people? But herein lies the paradox. While populism champions the cause of the people, it often undermines the very fundamentals of a democratic society: pluralism, rule of law, and checks and balances. So is this rise of populism a boon for people's power? Or does it pose a threat to the democratic values we hold dear? Join us as we delve into the journey of populism, from its inception to its current global influence. Populism didn't spring up overnight, it has a history. The roots of populism stretch back to the 19th century, a time of rapid industrialization, urbanization, and societal change. It was a period when society's divisions were starkly apparent, and the chasms between the haves and the have-nots were growing wider by the day. The genesis of populism was fueled by a potent mix of social inequality, economic disparity, and political disillusionment. Let's take a moment to explore each of these factors. Social inequality was rife in the 19th century. As the Industrial Revolution charged ahead, it created a chasm between the wealthy, who reaped the benefits, and the working class, who toiled in the factories. This disparity was a breeding ground for populism, as the marginalized classes began to demand a more equitable distribution of wealth and resources. Economic disparity was another key factor. The fruits of industrialization were unevenly distributed, with the rich getting richer while the poor remained trapped in poverty. The advent of capitalism only exacerbated these inequalities, leading to widespread dissatisfaction and resentment among the less fortunate. As economic disparity grew, so did the appeal of populist rhetoric, which promised to level the playing field and give the underprivileged a fair shot. Finally, there was political disillusionment. Many felt that the political elite was out of touch with the common man's struggles and concerns. This disconnect fostered a sense of alienation and resentment among the masses, who felt ignored and overlooked by the powers that be. The seeds of populism were sown in this fertile soil of discontent, as populist leaders rose to prominence by championing the cause of the people against the elite. And so, as the 19th century drew to a close, a new political force was gaining momentum. Born out of social inequality, economic disparity, and political disillusionment, populism was a response to the clamoring cries of the people against the elite. Thus began the era of populism, a response to the cries of the people against the elite. Populism started as a wave, and it has now become a global tide. As we journey through time, we see a pattern of populism spreading its influence across the globe. This spread, much like ripples in a pond, has been gradual, yet persistent. It's fascinating and at the same time a tad disconcerting to see how this political ideology has found resonance in different corners of the world. Over the years, various factors have fueled this rise of populism. Economic crises have played a significant role. When financial systems falter and the gap between the rich and the poor widens, people feel disenfranchised. They look for answers, for someone to blame, and populists provide a compelling narrative of the common people versus the corrupt elite. Immigration issues have also added fuel to the populist fire. Rapid demographic changes, often perceived as threats to national identity, have given rise to xenophobic sentiments. Populist leaders, with their rhetoric of protecting the native population, have capitalized on these fears. Nationalistic sentiments are another driving force. When people feel their national identity is under threat, they are more likely to rally behind leaders who promise to protect it. These leaders, often populist in nature, claim to be the voice of the real people, creating a sense of unity against perceived external threats. From Europe to Asia, from Africa to the Americas, we see these factors playing out in different ways, leading to the rise of populist movements. In some places, it's a reaction against globalization. In others, it's a pushback against perceived cultural erosion. But what's clear is that populism is not a phenomenon confined to a particular region or culture. It's a global tide, a reflection of the times we live in. It's a response to the complex challenges of our era, a manifestation of the fears, hopes, and frustrations of millions of people around the world. As we see, the rise of populism isn't confined to any one region. It's a global phenomenon. Populism and democracy share a complex relationship, one that is often misunderstood. Let's take a moment to unravel this intricate tapestry. Populism, in its essence, is a political approach that champions the common person, often creating a binary between the people and the elite. In this way, it can serve as a powerful tool to amplify the voices of those who feel marginalized or neglected by the system. This is where democracy, the rule of the people, can truly shine. Populism can push democratic societies to become more inclusive, responsive, and accountable. It can challenge elite dominance, bringing about a more equitable distribution of power and resources. But like a coin, populism has another side. While it can bolster democracy, it can also pose a significant threat. Populism can lead to majoritarianism, where the majority's interests overpower the minority's rights. In its extreme form, populism can foster an exclusionary politics that may undermine the very foundation of democracy. Imagine a scenario where the majority, fueled by populist rhetoric, begins to violate the rights of a minority group. In this situation, democracy is no longer about protecting everyone's rights, but about serving the majority's will. The scales of justice tip, and the democratic ideal of equality and fairness is compromised. Moreover, populism can also threaten democratic institutions and norms. Populist leaders, often charismatic and persuasive, can exploit the discontent of the masses to consolidate power, sometimes at the expense of checks and balances that keep the democracy healthy. In these ways, populism can weaken the democratic fabric, creating a paradox of sorts. It can lead to a situation where democracy, while seemingly thriving on the surface, is gradually eroding from within. So, we see a complex dance of strengthening and weakening, a push and pull that defines the relationship between populism and democracy. The challenge for democratic societies is to harness the positive aspects of populism while mitigating its potential threats. Democracy walks a tightrope, balancing between the benefits and threats of populism. It's a delicate balance indeed, and one that will shape the future of our global polity. What does the future hold for populism and democracy? As we gaze into the crystal ball of political discourse, the future of populism and democracy presents a complex picture, marked by the interplay of several factors. Let's explore some potential trends that might shape this landscape. The role of technology in the future of populism cannot be overstated. With the rise of social media, the spread of populist narratives has been exponentially accelerated. The digital age has democratized information, allowing populist leaders to bypass traditional media and directly engage with the masses. However, this also means that misinformation and propaganda can spread like wildfire, potentially skewing public opinion and undermining democratic processes. The impact of ongoing global crises on populism and democracy is another key factor. Crises, whether economic, social, or environmental, often breed discontent and uncertainty. Populist leaders can exploit these situations, offering simplistic solutions to complex problems and playing on people's fears and frustrations. This can lead to a surge in populist support, which may further strain democratic institutions. Which brings us to the need for democratic institutions to adapt. Democracies around the world must evolve to address the challenges posed by populism. This could involve bolstering checks and balances, promoting media literacy, and fostering inclusive dialogue that respects diversity of opinion. Furthermore, democracies must strive to address the root causes of populism, such as economic inequality and social exclusion. However, it's important to note that populism isn't inherently negative. There are instances where it has served as a catalyst for positive political change by giving voice to marginalized groups and challenging complacent elites. The challenge for democracies is to harness the energy of populism for constructive ends, while guarding against its potential pitfalls. The future of populism and democracy remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the conversation is far from over. As we move forward, it will be crucial to keep discussing, debating, and dissecting these issues in order to navigate the murky waters of our political future. We've journeyed through the rise of populism and its impact on democracy. We've seen how it sprouted from the seeds of discontent and dissatisfaction, eventually growing into a global phenomenon that has reshaped the political landscape of many nations. We've explored its complex relationship with democracy. While in some instances it has been a catalyst for political engagement and change, in others it has undermined democratic values and institutions. We've also looked into the crystal ball of the future, and it's clear that the story of populism and democracy is far from over. The path ahead is uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities alike. It's a tale that will continue to evolve, shaped by the actions of leaders, the sentiments of the public, and the unfolding of global events. As we continue to navigate this era of populism, remember, democracy thrives on dialogue and understanding. So keep the conversation going.